Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. As little as $2 a month gets you in the door. There are links in the description to the video. And if you would like to become a newsletter subscriber, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. You'll get work in progress immediate gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, and you get a free digital sketchbook when you sign up. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up my books there. And speaking of the Patreon, tomorrow is going to be our next session of our Patreon exclusive live streams. It's something we call Art Book Study Group, where we do deep dives, some of the best art books around. And the nice thing is we have a Discord live channel open, a Discord voice channel open. So as opposed to just typing chats in the comment, you actually get on there, get on the mic, and we can just talk one-on-one, have a back and forth. Subscribers can, send me artwork if there's something you want me to look at, give some feedback while we're talking. All of that on our Patreon exclusive Discord server. So head on over there if you want to participate. Tomorrow night it's going to be 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So for you guys, Patreon subscribers, it's a heads up. And if you miss it, you can always catch the replay. There are hundreds of hours of videos for you guys to check out leading up to this. You can catch up and see everything that's going on over there. All right. And on that note, let's see. Byron in the chat. See ya. Hey, people. How you doing, Byron? Thanks for rolling in. Figure drawing today. Today, figure drawing. Let me move some stuff around here so I can actually get to my figure drawing tools. My desk, my drawing area is in a little bit of chaos at the moment because I was moving a bunch of stuff around, trying to get a new overhead camera set up. And for now, I don't want to say stuck, because this USB camera has been very reliable for a number of years, and I do not want to discount it. It has been a trusted ally in my efforts to bring you online drawing sessions. However, what I've wanted to do for a good long time is get a camera that has a nice macro that I can place up above, like significantly above, but then zoom in so I can actually give you nice detail shots of my screen, of my drawing table while I'm working, as opposed to kind of this wider shot. You know what? I am getting to the point now where I'm gonna have to start wearing my glasses while I'm live streaming because it is difficult for me to see the camera. My eyes are aging and I'm getting older, and you know what? That is life. Life is aging and changing and wearing eyeglasses and changing your belt size. And what are you going to do? So what I'm working on here is drawings from my most recent figure drawing class. And what I tend to do is I'll tend to go through and just redraw what didn't come out well, what didn't work. This one is a pose from class. And then these two are ones. Our model was doing a pirate themed costume. He took a really great acting pose. And what we ended up suggesting to the model was maybe to do a sequence of poses where he would do one, and he would do himself as the other character interacting with that. And so the challenge that I found was, once I took that pose, trying to get them to line up, finding just the right position and posture for the characters, because it looked really, really cool, but it was one of those things where it was far more challenging in actual practice than it was in just the description. So this top drawing here was my first attempt at kind of working the composition out. And then all of these other sketches on this page are me just attempting to take what he did and doing the same thing, where I'm just working out in thumbnails, trying to get the composition right. So let me bring this down a little bit lower, just so you guys can see better. And see, this is the thing. The new camera that I got, I wanted to have it set up so I could have it above and just with a twist of a ring, adjust the zoom of the lens so you guys can kind of see the whole thing. Or you can just see the area and have it set up. But you know what? I guess this is working okay. I should not complain. Let me see. I was sitting here saying, I hope that all my pencils are sharp. I don't want to have to sit here and waste time on a live stream where you're like, hey guys, want to watch me sharpen pencils? Nah, that's not cool. So I guess the challenge here is that the two poses are just, you know, there's pirates fighting and one of them is crossing his swords and jamming the other pirate's sword down. And I'm trying to get a nice pose where both of them are convincing. But I'm also trying to get something that was happening with the model, like in the original drawing, you know, his shoulders, I actually exaggerated how much his shoulders are up. That's because I thought it just looked really cool to have him have his shoulders like really tweaked up and forcing the other guy's sword down. And I may have screwed myself by trying to make that so dramatic. So let's see here. How do I want to do this? I've already drawn a few different thumbnail attempts. Just this a little bit more. I guess I'm trying to start by blocking in a ground pose, a ground plane, so I can have a sense of where these guys are going to be standing when they're doing this. And he hasn't done it in a long while, but Carl Ganas used to teach this class specifically on just doing two-figure composition. And all it was just figure drawing sessions where you're working with two models instead of one. And damn if that does not challenge you, but significantly improve your sense of composition. Let's see here. So I guess the main thing is I'm trying to find a way to place their feet so that you really get a sense of them interacting in the same space. Crossing over each other. Something as simple as that. Stick figures of two people with their legs kind of intertwined. And the surprise of how challenging that can be to make that feel correct in space. But yeah, it can be very challenging. And what's weird is this particular pencil that I'm using, I don't know if I just didn't sand it well, but it's giving it a very strange sort of finish to it, much more grainy than I usually expect from a General's 4B. Expect them to usually be much smoother. And I think what's going to have to happen here is the pose that I had for the guy crossing the swords is just going to have to change in order for these two to work. Now, see, here's what's interesting, at least to me. These characters, you get a sense of them interacting by having their feet cross. But in order for the sword play to really work, I think they need to be further apart. And I think that's what I keep going back and forth between in terms of sketching this and the other thumbnails that I've sketched, is trying to position them so that they feel like they are interacting, but their swords feel like their swords are interacting. And I might be trying to force something that doesn't work by trying to move them closer together. But see, that's the point of doing little thumbnails like this. Like literally, I'll fill a whole page with me doing variations of a pose or a composition until I figure out what it is that works for these characters. Let's see here. Muhammad Reza in the chat says hello. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for popping by. Doing a little bit of figure drawing here, a little gesture drawing of some pirates fighting. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, I can already tell you that I'm going to draw another thumbnail after this. But I just want to draw a little bit more and see if there's anything I can learn from this drawing that I can take forward into the next thumbnail. Because I've realized, all right, this may only work if I pose these characters farther apart. But if I just stop now and jump into the next drawing, there may be other problems that will pop up. And maybe by just sketching a little bit further on this one, it may reveal to me what else I need to shift around in order to make this work. Let's see here. I've moved the hands around on a few different poses because if I put the hands where they were with the actual model in real life, the foreshortening on the forearm is so strong, you really can't. Like the arm basically disappears behind a broad, conical shaped, cone shaped cup, like cuff, not cup. Basically, the forearm is kind of hidden by that cone, and it makes it really hard to give you a sense of the structure of the hand. I mean, the structure of that forearm. It's just like it disappears behind that, and then you see the upper arm behind it. So I've kind of moved it around in a lot of these different thumbnails that I've drawn to try and just figure out what it is that I really want. All right, so now I'm going to switch. Let's try a pose here where they're a little farther apart. And I think what I need to do now is just normally what I do is I draw lines to just establish the height of the figures. But I think I need to establish sort of the parameters of the whole composition only because I want to give myself room to move the figures closer or further apart. But I think this time I'm going to try and focus on what makes the swords work. So if I have these two swords crossing against each other, what do I have to do to make the bodies make sense for that pose? And it's a little bit like the idea of if you start drawing a figure, you can start with the head and then work down to the torso, work down the rib cage and the pelvis and the feet, and drawing from top to bottom. Unless you have a really good sense of proportion, it's really easy for things to get out of whack if you just go start at one end of the figure and go to the other. And I really prefer blocking the whole thing in. So this whole idea of starting with the swords, but then trying to jump around, it's almost like starting with the swords is like starting with a head or a hand or a foot or one corner of the figure and working my way around from there. But I need to get that part working in order to figure out where I want to put the rest of the figures. I see Chris is in the chat. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Thanks for stopping by. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing something creative. Just doing some going over some figure drawing work from my my recent figure drawing class, and just trying to thumbnail out what I want from this this pose for the session. Who knows? It might be that in order for this to work, I have to pose these figures significantly farther apart than I originally intended. I mean, I'll say that the drawing that I did right here is probably the best rough in terms of it feeling like how I want it to feel, but still the characters they're wonky. And when I say wonky, to be specific, it's that sense of when you're drawing something that has perspective lines, but they are not in perspective. And it's not the thing where it's a cool stylized, like, oh, this street is kind of distorted and you've got, different buildings that go off on different planes. It doesn't feel like that intentional distortion. It just feels like, perspective's off. And that's how I feel about the gesture of these figures. And so before I go and I do a cleaned up drawing, I just want to keep working through this until I get those gestures down, until those gestures feel like, oh, okay, this feels like a thought out scene that has not photorealism, but it does not break the laws of its own drawing. So within the style that I'm rendering it, everything makes sense. It doesn't mean it has to be photorealistic, but it just feels like it doesn't contradict the tone of the drawing that I've set up. And I'm trying to find ways to make the poses more interactive. Like before up here, I tried drawing with one character's foot crossing behind the other. Now instead I'm trying something similar to what I did in this pose, but it's having the shape, the actual negative space between the feet, having these feet interlock. That to me seems to work. Let's see here. Artistic Jiu-Jitsu in the chat. Hey there, Jeremy. Hey there. How you doing? Thanks for joining us. Going over some figure drawings, making some corrections, analyzing them, and figuring out what I can do to make them better. Let's see here. Martin's in the chat. Hey, hey, hey. Good to see you, Martin. Thanks for popping in, everybody. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, gesture feels like it's the backbone of figurative composition, as opposed to like when you're doing a composition that has buildings or vehicles or what have you. But it's just the act of taking one figure's body and making it work in a complementary way with another figure's body. That is it's tricky. It's tricky because it's something that it sounds on paper very simple. You know, like just making two bouncing balls work together. Yeah. Making a positive shape and a negative shape interact with each other. But it also means taking every single, when I say every single part, I just mean making the limb, each torso, each hand, each foot, each head, convincingly feel like they are in some way occupying space relative to the other figure's body. Again, things that I can say the words, just making things relate to each other. That's all. It sounds so simple. And it's not. I mean, usually in comics, you think about the fact that, like, you know, most of the time what you're drawing is characters relating to each other. A character punching another character hugging another one, character tackling somebody. All of these physical interactions that we think of with your traditional action comic book. I mean, a lot of times when I am in figure drawing class and I'm doing gestures, when I am first blocking in the figure, I'm thinking about the same way I'm thinking about making these two figures interact. I'm thinking about making, see, this is one of those where I'm drawing so small now, I really feel like I need to get in close. Because when I am working out, you know, I shouldn't get it any smaller because I'm going to flip the page soon and then I'm probably going to draw a little bit bigger. So I changed my mind there. But when I'm working out these details, I'm usually thinking, like when I'm blocking in a figure and I'll draw in one arm and then draw the hand or a little, you know, sphere for an elbow or a joint. I'm thinking, well, how does this relate to, in a single figure pose, I'm thinking, how does this relate to the other figure's hand? How does this relate? How does the hand or the elbow relate to the knee? And I'm thinking about how they relate in terms of space. I'm thinking about how they relate in terms of the angle that they're coming at. Are they coming directly at the viewer? Are they coming to the side? Are they going up? Are they going away from us? I'm thinking about all those things just in doing a single figure gesture for not even costume, but just like nude, like figure drawing, where you're just drawing the human form. And I'm saying that just in relating the idea that getting these two figures to work well with each other is that same challenge, but to a high degree. I'm trying to pose this guy so that his sword feels like it's going someplace I want it to. And I think I might move this hand. This is the thing. Each time I've drawn these little thumbnails, I've kept the hand. In this original drawing, the hand was pressed against the side of the body. The arm was pressed against the side of the body with the forearm and hand coming right out at us. But in looking at this, I'm wondering, maybe it makes the silhouette a lot stronger to move the arm out a little bit. I mean, I don't know. It seems like the hand works in this one pose. So I think I have dithered around long enough and that I'm ready to take another shot at drawing something that's a little more finished. But I'm just going to make a little bit of a note here mentally because I'm going to flip pages. So I'm not going to have this thumbnail to look at, but just the fact that this foot that's going back is above this figure's front foot and about level with the knee of his, well, this figure's foot that's farther away from us, and then the knee of the leg that's closer to us, his foot's about level with that. Then this character's foot that's coming forward, maybe about equal to that front foot. I think that's a little bit more dynamic if they aren't completely parallel, but it does give me sort of measurements to start with in terms of figuring out where the feet line up. You know, torso's about the same. His head might be a little bit, the top of his head might be a little bit below the bottom of this guy's head because he's leaning over and forward. And that's the one thing is that the figure on the right, I sort of straightened him out because he very much had a strong lean into the other figure. So, all right, let's give it another shot. And I feel like I should switch pencils because there's something up with this. It is the poor artist who blames his tools for failures instead of blaming himself. But there's a graininess to this pencil that the other, I love my General's charcoal pencils, but every once in a while I'll get one. And I don't know if it's the binding or what, but the charcoal has a weird grit to it that does not lay down well on newsprint. So let's switch. In fact, looking at this, I feel like this page of thumbnails is more helpful to me than the original drawing from the session. That's over on this other page. So I think what I'm going to do is unclip these from my drawing board. And I'm going to move them over here. So I will have these to look at whilst I work on a new version. All right. So let's take a look. Let's see here. See Joshua Middleton just stumbled across your stream. Lovely gestural figure drawing and great balance of shapes, lines, and curves. Hardly needs any more finish. That is very, very kind of you to say, Joshua. And if you're the same Joshua Middleton, comic creator. I think I bought some comics from you at a comic convention in Arizona one time. Your work is amazing. That very, very clean line style. And I'm not sure if you've changed and done different things over the years, because I know it's been a while since I've checked in on what you, on the work you've been doing lately. But that work is, your work is very beautiful, and kind words from you mean a tremendous amount. So thank you. I appreciate that. Anyway, you know what? And it's funny. That's something for me to segue as I block in this revision. I myself, I think I tend to draw lighter and looser and rougher because that's what I tend to be drawn to. But I think that I'm aware that there's a possibility for an artist of falling into that trap of, well, that's just how I draw. I think that I make efforts to be a little bit more defined, to draw things that are a little bit more solid, only because for much of my artistic life, I would simply block things in roughly and loosely, but it was because I didn't know what it was I was trying to draw. So I just put in scribbly lines or cool expressive marks or paint splatters just because, oh, well, it might not be correct, but it looks cool. And I've shied away from that in recent years only because I feel like I want to, it's not that I have anything against very expressive stylistic art. It's what I make. But I feel like I want to draw from a place of knowledge where if I'm leaving details out, it's because it's a choice. And it's also because maybe I have figured out a way to imply those things gesturally as opposed to accurately drawing every line or roll or fold or wrinkle. I want to get to that place. And, figure drawing classes are one of the things that's helping me so much with that. I'm always working on improving. And yes, Josh says, yes, that's me. He says, thank you kindly. I'm curious to see where you go from here. Well, I am too. The idea of these sessions that I do, I like to call them fixing bad figure drawing sessions, because I take figure drawing classes pretty much weekly. And for me, the thing that's been helping me the most in terms of my artistic growth and continued development is taking the drawings from class and looking at all the places where compositionally, anatomically, whichever, in all aspects, where did the drawing go wrong? Not in a sense of beating myself up, but more in terms of a sense of, all right, there's gaps in my knowledge. Let's take a look at these gaps in my knowledge. Let's look at this and say, all right, well, what happens if I change the volumes here and make this feel more solid? What happens if I pay more attention to the values and break down, maybe put dark against light shapes? What happens if I'm using too many straight lines and I need to draw things a little bit rounder or curvier? So it's that act of going through and making constructive criticism of my own work, because I figured that's actually the only way I'm going to get better. It's one thing to have someone come, look at your work, and make corrections and show you what you're doing wrong. I've had artists who aren't necessarily even as experienced as I am, but they have a great eye, and they can look at my work and say, oh, I see what you're trying to do here. Maybe you want to try this or that. Let me adjust the camera a little bit more to see more of the page here. But it's one thing to have another person's eye come in and point out deficiencies, and you're like, oh, you're right, I need to fix that. It's another thing to train my own eye to just understand when I'm doing things that are off I mean, this is more kind of for the rest of the live stream audience, because obviously, Joshua, I know that you know all of those things. Yeah, this is usually, like most of my streams, it's me kind of rambling on and talking to the chat as I'm sketching. So it is something where I find talking while I'm drawing is challenging, but I don't often remember exactly what I'm thinking and feeling about a drawing when I do it, when I come back to it later. Like I used to just record time lapses and then sort of like record a discussion about the drawing or whatever I was working on afterwards. You know, usually like when I was working on comic pages, which I'm spending a lot of time doing figure drawing because I'm still writing, deep in the writing phase of my next book. But I found that when I would do videos later and try to remember what it was that I was thinking or feeling, I might be able to speak more coherently, but the actual memory of this is what I was thinking or feeling while I was drawing. This is what was going through my mind. This is what I was struggling with. It didn't have that immediacy. And I've found that while I ramble more while live streaming, those ramblings, at least they capture nuances that I might not remember if I'm just recording something later. All right. Although at this point, I realize I do need to focus a little bit more. That's the other thing. Sometimes I'll be drawing and talking, and then I'll realize, oh, wait, this is going sideways just because I'm not paying attention. Let's see here. Trying to get these feet to interlock a little bit more. And there was something really nice about how the rough, like the rough of this particular guy, the way his hip dips and these pants are going down, I'm losing that. And I kind of need to push the drawing back into that, which means kind of adjusting his pelvis a little bit, tilting it towards the left a little bit more. Let his pants and the leg drop a little bit more. You know, and it's kind of a crazy thing. When I'm in figure drawing class, I'm often thinking about the fact that, you know, the gesture phase, that opening phase, is supposed to be a playful phase. You're kind of getting in there and exploring and moving things around and figuring out like the rhythm of the whole figure. But at the same time, I have found that if I don't get a good gesture in, no amount of rendering will save that drawing. My little cat Khaleesi is sitting here. My other regular art critic. Sweetheart, why don't you get in the condo and hush up while we stream? Let's see here. You know, Joshua says, some good drawing can happen when you let that stream of consciousness flow. But yes, one can go off the rails when the stream turns into a river. Very, very true. That is it's a constant play between letting my mind explore and flow, and then trying to bring attention back to what am I trying to say with this particular drawing? And I say that in the general, like, figure drawing sense, because, you know, when you're making a finished piece of art, what you're trying to say with the drawing, honestly, a lot of times there's so much more that plays into it with your visual message and your composition, that sometimes a drawing that is not even a very good drawing can be more powerful than something that's highly rendered. And in that case, what you're trying to say is more about storytelling. And while this is a scene with two figures, so it does have storytelling to some degree, I think of it more in terms of I'm looking at a moment from almost like a picture book, like a Howard Pyle. I mean, Howard Pyle's an easy grab because it's pirates, and obviously he did great pirate work. But looking at it almost like it's a Howard Pyle picture book, and I'm like, all right, am I expressing just what is the scene? What are the costumes? And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and draw this as detailed with all the reference that Howard Pyle does with or did with his costume models. But this is the costume that the model was wearing in the figure drawing class. So that's as much reference for me to pull from. And it's just a matter of me trying to figure out, am I capturing, I don't know, the volume of his billowing pants? Am I capturing the fold of the, maybe not the fold of the leather, the wrinkles of the leather in his boots, but maybe the way that his boots, that's what's crazy. His boots, there's a reason why comic book, like Captain America's boots look the way they did. Like his boots don't have that big cuff that that you see that Captain America's boots have, but when you get to the toes, they totally have that rounded comic booky, like square in the back, but almost like an oval in the front. Like they look like cartoon character Terry and the Pirates boots. And I was like, that's pretty awesome. Let's see here. James is in the chat. I'm here now. Good to see you, James. Thanks for popping in. So Joshua asks, are you currently only referencing drawings from the figure drawing class which had a live model, or are you still referring to the model reference? I am only referring to the drawings from the live model. It was a class that was done on Zoom. So we were drawing from live models, not photos, but still we're looking at it on a monitor. And based on what the pose, the particular set of poses the model took, what I actually do is I save, I try to go through all of my drawings from the session, and I look for drawings where I see things that I don't know. This particular class is on drawing costumes and drapery and folds, but the same instructor has a class on heads, hands, and feet. He's got one on detailed anatomy, one on gesture. I've taken all of his classes multiple times, and I keep taking them because I learn new stuff every time. But the thing for me is going through my drawings and specifically looking for ones that, I don't want to say failures are the wrong word, but let's just say a drawing that, and there's plenty of them in every figure drawing session, where there's a lack of knowledge. Because obviously for me, I mean, yeah, you can take drawing just for the figure drawing, just for the relaxation, the spontaneous pleasure act of it. But I honestly, when I first started taking figure drawing classes, it was for the express purpose of, I did not feel like I draw well enough to tell the comic book stories that I want to tell. And it's been an act of trying to just improve my draftsmanship. So I look at the model, I look at the drawings where, okay, there is something either anatomical here or volumetric, or just in terms of like organizing shapes and designing the figure, that I'm like, okay, I'm missing something here. And then it's going back through all of those drawings. And I would say probably about, I don't necessarily go through all of them, but in any given session, half of the drawings will have things in there where I'm like, okay, I can learn a lot just by sitting here and trying to figure out what I don't know. And in the years that I've been doing figure drawing classes, I do find now that I've reached a point where I enjoy the practice of just studying the figure on a meditative level, that I get pleasure just from that. But I try to keep in mind that I still have this goal of improving my craft, because otherwise I could fall into that trap of just embracing style for style's sake and not really caring whether something looks. It's complicated, because I don't feel like, when I look at other artists, I don't feel like they have to draw correct. There's lots of artists that have loose, sketchy stuff. Like, for instance, I love Eddie Campbell. I love Ashley Wood. Guys like Ashley Wood, Ben Templesmith, Bill Sienkiewicz. I mean, Bill Sienkiewicz, that's the amazing thing. It's like you see all of the structure and knowledge underneath it, but he can still draw this and paint these incredibly splattery, chaotic, distorted messes. But yet you still see structure and anatomy and wisdom inside of the chaos. And for me, I think I started off imitating the chaos without any of the knowledge underneath. And I started probably a journey of taking figure drawing classes regularly over a decade ago, to try and, I guess, give myself the knowledge so that when I embrace chaos, I'm repeating myself, but it's embracing the chaos from a place of strength. Let's see here. And James says, yeah, stream of consciousness. That relates to a drawing I started a few nights ago. I was looking at some surreal stuff, mainly focusing on the form. Inadvertently, I ended up with something reminiscent of a drawing where you look without looking at the paper. I used to do that in school. I'm going to stick with that and see what I get. He says, yeah, blind contour drawing. That's the term. I hated blind contour drawing when I've always hated it whenever I had to do it in a class. And I'll tell you guys an interesting story. And this is one of those things where I try not to beat myself up too much. But when I started, I went to a fine art college, and the first figure drawing class I took, our very first homework assignment that week was to go home and try to do the worst drawing that we could possibly do. Our homework assignment was to do a bad drawing, a horrible drawing. And because I remember those contour drawing exercises, the blind contour drawings, I went home and I did one of those. I can't even remember what it was that I drew, but I went home, did a blind contour drawing. Brought it in the next session later that week. And then what he didn't tell us is that we were going to put all the drawings up and have a crit. And obviously everyone's blood runs cold, because it's one thing to do a intentionally bad drawing. It's another thing to put that work on display for your peers to critique. But I think that it was probably one of the most powerful lessons about the subjectivity of art that I've ever had, because everyone, one by one, we went up there, we put all our works up, all our horrible drawings, and it was not the art school confidential, like Knives Out, where everyone is just vicious and looking to cut each other down. Like, people would go up, like one by one, people would be going through and looking at other people's work. And as we were talking about, they're like, I thought you were supposed to do a bad drawing. They're like, look at this. Look at the way you did the lighting and shade on there. And some people did black and white. Some people used color. And they're like, oh my God, the colors you had here are beautiful. And like basically, if anything, people were angry that other people's drawings weren't bad enough. And they would point at mine and see mine, that's a terrible drawing. Look at you. What? Come on. You didn't even try to do a bad drawing. That's not bad enough. And it was heartwarming in that all of the things that we struggle with and that we see that's wrong in our artwork. Yes, there are drawing fundamentals that can be critiqued. And you can literally say, all right, you can do this to make a better drawing. But technical skill is only one aspect of capital A art. And I want to be a better artist but being a better artist is only part of that is improving my technical skills. Expression and communication is probably the most significant thing. And that's not to let, I know, when you look at a lot of modern art in galleries and you're like, why is this in a gallery? This is horrible. It kind of sounds like I'm trying to be an advocate for that work. But I don't hate that work either. I think that it really broadened my mind to the fact that all these different ways of expressing are forms of communication. And to give myself the grace of sometimes when the drawing part isn't going well, maybe I'm still expressing something that has value. And to be willing to be vulnerable enough to share that, even in the face of whatever technical flaws I may have. And Joshua says, despite the chaos, quite a lot of real world reference. Oh yeah, in terms of Sienkiewicz, I think that was in terms of Sienkiewicz, but yeah, you can, yeah, he's one of those, like, it's a sad purpose, but every time someone of note in pop culture passes, that he tends to do tribute paintings, and they're beautiful. And I even remember, I think I was either in my last year of high school or my first year of college when Sienkiewicz published that biography of that comic book biography of Jimi Hendrix. And it is one of the most beautiful comics I've ever seen. Like, it's right up there with Andrew Robinson's Fifth Beatle, in terms of just sheer artistic beauty. Yeah, that thing. I feel like that was the forerunner to the Fifth Beatle. But great, amazing, beautiful work. That's what I'm talking about in terms of reference and skill, but then still, as Joshua said, embracing that chaos. Let's see here. James says style is subjective. He says, I don't like the look of Kelly Jones' Batman, but it seems that he embraces chaos. See, and that's a funny thing. Kelly Jones, taste is subjective. I love me some Kelly Jones. In fact, he just did like a Kickstarter a while ago for a vampire book with him and Matt Wagner. And that, that's like a 1-2 punch right there. But yeah, Kelly Jones stuff, he's another guy. I mean, Batman, everyone's got a different favorite Batman artist. And that's a place right there. You want to talk about subjective. You can just limit it to who's your favorite Batman artist. And that's like a 2-hour conversation / battle royale argument, because some people are super passionate about their Batman artists. I think that I'm one of those people who my tastes may lean in a particular direction, but my tastes are kind of they're mushy in the sense that it's almost like I can love a Jerry Robinson. Oh wait, no, it's Jerry Robinson the writer, and it was something not Jerry, but it was a Springer who was an artist. I know there's Bill Finger. He was obviously one of the earliest notable Batman artists, but I can love, that early Batman work as much as I love Frank Miller, as much as I love Neil Adams, as much as I love like Sean Murphy, Jorge Jimenez, even like recent current people drawing Batman right now that I love. We could go on forever about that. And Byron says, that sounds oddly fun. I'm not going to lie. The blind contour drawing, I think that you should do one. Obviously, you know what? Next live stream, I'm going to do one because I hate them. And I'm not afraid to. This is me trying to be real and vulnerable. So next live stream, I'm going to make a note. So I'm going to live do something that I absolutely hate and that I believe I am horrible at. And I'm going to find the reference. I'm going to find some reference to work from. Oh, this is what we're going to do. We're going to combine 2 different exercises because I've been doing film studies from film frames. I've been doing alternating between those and figure drawing. And I think what I'm going to do is I am going to do a blind contour drawing of a film study from the most recent the Robert Pattinson Batman movie. To find a good Batman frame and do a blind contour film study. So we're really gonna put a hat on a hat on a hat on this next live stream next week. We're gonna go crazy, like intentionally crashing the bus just to see what happens. All right, I'm getting really off of the screen here. This is one of those where I'm realizing now as I'm going, I'm losing the sense of the whole, and I'm gonna need to focus a little bit more to pull this back in. And by the way, we're almost at an hour here, so I'll keep sketching for a little while longer because we're enjoying this, but we'll probably end maybe in the next 10 or 15 minutes we'll wrap up. But I am, of course, loving this conversation with you guys. James says, I know you shouldn't take critiques personally, and I can see how they can be helpful, but what if you don't agree? Do you take what is helpful and still implement that into your work? I've gotten some harsh critiques before that I shouldn't have dwelled on, but I wasn't used to getting harsh critiques. Well, there's two kinds of harsh critiques. There's a harsh critique where someone is kind, but they're telling you things that you really don't want to hear. And then there's the harsh critique where someone, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but they're doing it in a really dickish way. So the first part is that I really try to remove the presentation of the critique, the way it's delivered. I try to just remove that from the equation, because I've been fortunate in that I try to treat people I interact with respect. And when you treat people with respect, they tend to respond in kind. I've been lucky that I haven't had people actively come up to me in disrespectful ways and be harsh. But honestly, I don't hate my own work. I draw because I love the physical act. I love the way it makes me feel to draw. But I tend not to think that I tend to be, you guys have heard me. I'm very critical of my own work, but I'm critical from a place of, let's make things better. I'm not critical from a place of, oh, I suck, everyone hates me. I'm not coming from that place. Pardon me for a second. Allergies are kicking up in this area, and I need. All right, there we go. Unmuted. Hey, everybody, the allergy streams are back. In terms of taking harsh critiques, yes, I do try to look at the critique regardless of how it's delivered, and I try to at least ask myself, is this something that I can benefit from? Is there something there that the person said, even if I don't like it? Even if it's somehow kind of hurts, like, oh man, that really is something that bothers me. Is there something I can take from this critique to make my artwork better? Now, you said specifically, what if you disagree? Well, see, that's an interesting thing, because it has been rare for someone to make a critique of my work and for me to look at it and say, oh, you are wrong. That's not what this is. Most of the time when someone critiques my work, I look at it, I'm like, they got a point. I may decide that there's other things that I'm more concerned with working on and improving than the issue that they pointed out. But honestly, it's been rare for me to get a critique from somebody and disagree with them. In fact, it was funny. A long, long time ago, I was at a comic convention, and I asked Ryan Benjamin, another comic creator, to look at my work and give me some feedback. And what was interesting was that he could tell that I was very influenced by Bill Sienkiewicz, and he commented on that, and he said, I can see the expressive stuff that you're trying to do, and it looked, I tell you, looking now, it looks like me doing a bad impression of Ben Templesmith. It looks like me trying to draw Ben Templesmith with my non-dominant hand. And he said, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to give you feedback on how to do what you want to do better. But he did say, you know, and I think this was before I had started doing figure drawing classes regularly, but he said, working from the figure will help improve your fundamentals so that you can, a lot of what I said earlier about working from a place of strength when you're doing chaotic work is he said, lean into doing figure drawing more, working from the figure, working from life, and get that sense of realism so that when you go and do these things, when you try to do the expressive work, it will feel more, I don't know if authentic is the word to use, but it was a very, very good critique. To me, it felt like he did not crap on my work. He pointed out places where I could improve and said, lean into improving your skills and your strength, improving the strength that you want in order to do the things you want to. So that's kind of how I took that critique. I felt it was very, very useful and helpful, and I was very appreciative of his time and thanked him for it. If you ever had somebody critique, oh, by the way, I see Josh is getting ready to call it a night. Let me just real quick say thank you so much. I appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully, I do these live streams this same time every week. So hopefully I'll see you again sometime. But and hopefully I'll see you in person at a convention sometime. Be well. Continue doing great work. I'm gonna look you up on Instagram if I'm not already following you, so I can keep an eye on what you're doing these days. Thanks so much for stopping by. It was good to talk to you again. Let's see here. Oh, and Joshua to also say, yes, the Hendricks book is fantastic, and Andrew Robinson's skill is really underappreciated. I feel like there's two kinds of people who love Andrew Robinson and people who just don't know his work. I remember loving his work when I first found, this was a long time ago, but there's a company called Caliber Comics. And he had a series that he published first, I think, in an anthology that they did, then eventually had a limited series for this Western character named Dusty Star. And I will tell you, it's no small coincidence that my comic book was called Morning Star. I was very, very influenced by that particular Andrew Robinson comic. And yes, mine's a supernatural Western, whereas his was almost like Tank Girl in the Old West. And I say that because also his work had, at that time, a very Jamie Hewlett feel to it, not in a copying him way, but just you could feel, you could see similarities. And for me, those similarities were positive because this was still probably 20 years before Gorillas, or even longer. So all I knew of Jamie Hewlett was with the early Tank Girl stuff, and I loved that too. So. But let's see here. Artistic Jiu-Jitsu is in the chat. It says, I love it. I'm having a hard time watching you draw and working on an ink wash comic for a panel. It's kind of fun either way. Well, I'll never tell someone to leave my stream. But if it's making it hard for you to draw, you're more than welcome to come back and watch later when you have time, because I know that for me, there's art streams that I have a bunch of YouTube chat tabs open because they're videos that I started watching and then I was like, this is too interesting. I can't do this while I'm drawing. I will come back later and watch this when I have a chance. Not that I think that I am so interesting that I'm one of those artists, but I think of it more in terms of I don't want any other creative to sacrifice their focus just because they're hanging out with me, because I want you to do the best work you can do. So it's up to you to decide, but I'm happy that you're here while you are here. Let's see here. James says, right, I drew a purse before any of my teachers said, she said that teacher said that it looked like a vagina. That bothered me. Granted, purses do kind of look like that. Oh man, see, you are different from your personality. I think is very kind, and you're not a belligerent artist. When I was in high school, I was one of those. I was kind of a troublemaker. If my teacher told me something like, "Oh, this looks like a vagina," then I would just, for the rest of the semester, I would just draw purses. I would go online and, well, there was no internet when I was in high school. That's how old I am. There was no internet. I would go get a fashion magazine, go get me a copy of Vogue or Cosmo or whatever, and I would just clip every ad for a different type of fashion purse. And I would do like a Gucci, a Louis Vuitton, a whatever else, because those are the only purses I can think of. And I would just go through and I would just do pictures, finished pieces of purses. And I would just have a whole portfolio of purses. And be like, what are you trying to get? Are you trying to be a fashion illustrator? I'm like, nope, just making a point. And I would just be like, here's my portfolio of purse vaginas. That is what I would have done. So, I mean, that's also part of the personality is like, for me, I think I'm lucky, knock on wood, that I haven't had people actively being mean or hurtful about my artwork. But I try to also look at if somebody says something that's critical, I try to take all of these things with a playful attitude. How can I have fun with what they said, or doing something, to counter the criticism that they might have gotten, or just kind of take the piss out of them. For instance, we had an assignment in high school, again, where we were supposed to draw food, which to me is boring as shit. So what I did was, those bomb pops, the ice cream, not the ice cream, the ice pops that are red, white, and blue, and the tall, long ones with the wooden stick. So I did my rough sketch for the assignment, and it was just a girl eating the pop. Now, we all know that drawing anyone eating an ice cream pop or eating an ice, whatever it is, a pop, anyone eating a popsicle can easily be interpreted as sexually suggestive. And of course, I had the girl with her tongue out, and I had the pop with like the glistening beads of condensation running down it. And she just came by my desk, looked over my shoulder, and she was like, no, you are not doing that for this assignment. I mean, she knew what I was doing, and she just like, no. And I was like, all right, fair, bet. So you know what I turned in for the assignment? A vampire draining a woman of blood. Because to the vampire, that's food. Now, mind you, even with that, I had the subversive attitude in my mind that the woman, her face looked like a little bit like agony, but it also had a little bit of the petite mort, a little bit of the small death, like she's in pain, but she's into it. That's the expression I put on her face. So even with that, I still was not letting go of the sexually suggestive ideas in the artwork. And and I kind of feel bad because I really did put my high school art teacher through the paces in that sense. But she kind of looked at me and sighed, and she thought, well, it was better than the popsicle. So she let it roll. So that was my my work right there. That's my approach generally towards criticism is, can I play with it? Can I do something fun? And you know what? Honestly, the same assignment, when I was working on the vampire piece, there was a point where I was turning my drawing board, I mean, you guys all know this. If whether you're working in pencil or in ink, there may be like a line that you're trying to get, like a long, smooth line. So you'll turn the board so you can make that arc in a way that is natural to your arm, whereas it would be difficult to do it with the board at a different angle. But anyway, I was working on a piece, and I had it, I think, turned sideways or upside down. And my instructor, my teacher, she said, you shouldn't do that. She's like, what are you going to do if you're working on a canvas? You can't just turn things around or upside down like that. I mean, she was very much more of a traditional fine. In fact, actually, pottery was her thing. But I mean, she taught the AP art classes. So obviously she was well trained in all aspects of art making. But, you know, she didn't know anything about animation. And I remember years later, when I was in college and I was taking animation classes, and they had the animation discs in the they had desks with animation tables with the rotating discs so that you can rotate your drawings. And I saw that, and they're all and of course, as they're showing us how to use it, you know, they're showing us the peg system on there and and they show, and aside from having a light box in there, the table is angled so that you can turn it so that you can make whatever marks you need to make. And I'm looking at that, and I immediately thought of my my teacher in high school telling me not to rotate my canvas or not to rotate my board to get angles. I'm like, you liar! Animators make tools so they can do what I'm doing. So just goes to say, you know, every piece of feedback you get, you have to think about who the source of that feedback is, and that, you know, they might be giving that sense of that particular feedback because they're cranky people. They might be giving it because their goals for art or what they think you're trying to do, they may not understand your goals, or they may just not have the artistic background. They might be great artists, but, you know, you're not going to go to an oil painter necessarily for feedback about comic panel composition. You know, it depends on what the expertise is. I see Kepi Roblox in the chat. It says, "Boo! Did I scare you?" You know what? Somehow I felt you didn't scare me, but I felt a tingling up the back of my neck when you creeped into the chat, when you slipped in. So I feel that. Oh, let's see here. Artistic Jiu-Jitsu says, no way, I'm enjoying this. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're hanging in there. And James says, I'm sure Giger would have enjoyed your portfolio. Hold on for a moment, because I'm going to show you something. And Byron is like, no, laughing my ass off. I'm glad you enjoyed that too. Let's see here. Artistic Jiu-Jitsu said, listening to you share that experience with your art instructor made me realize that many artists have an obnoxious streak. I love it. Well, you know what? But it's a balance, because you have to remember, art instructors are people too. They're just humans with their subjective tastes and their foibles. But remember also the story I told you about my first college instructor and that whole do a bad drawing assignment, and how helpful that was and kind of freeing me to not be so. I think that I have become more self-conscious over my life as an artist, in terms of like the act of trying to improve has made me more self-conscious. But what that instructor was trying to do by giving us the assignment of doing a bad drawing was to try and alleviate some of that self-consciousness that we tend to bring to our work early on. Let's see here. And Kepi Roblox, I'm glad that I was able to pass the challenge. He's like, yo, they're like, yo, somebody finally pronounced it right. You're the first one. Yes. Well, I will tell you this. I'm not going to say that I'm great at reading, at pronouncing unusual names, but my name is Jeremy, and it's spelled Gerimi. So I have empathy for unusual names, whether they're real names or whether they're online handles. There's challenge, they can be challenging. Oh, but James had mentioned Giger. Hang on, I'm just moving. Whoa. I have like all of these circle templates and French curves hanging on the wall here. And as I moved the drawing board, I just knocked half of them down. But I'm going to step behind the screen here because I've got a bookcase. Oh. Oh. So, oh God. Just so you guys can see, I'm going to switch back to the big screen. Just so you can see how big these books are in comparison to my head. So I have, well, actually here, I'll just leave it this way because I can't really show a lot of these because even the covers are a little crazy. Let me turn off the, I've got a ring light that's creating a little bit of a glare. But I've got H.R. Giger's Necronomicon 2. Necronomicon 1, which I'm just going to flash real quick because I don't want to get my channel dropped. Giger's Biomechanics. And then also, like, these are like my prized possessions. And then I've got Giger's Film Design. This one was a gift from my college roommate, one of my closest friends, Dave, got this for me one year. And it was incredibly sweet and thoughtful of him because none of these Giger books are cheap. And basically, once I went away to college, I was in art school. And for as much as I'm into weird art, like Giger, my parents have always been supportive. They may not be into the same art that I'm into, but they were always supportive. So when I was away at college, I saw that they actually, believe it or not, they had the Necronomicon at our college bookstore. And I had seen it also at the bookstore that I worked in high school, but it was always shrink wrapped, so I could never look inside. At the college bookstore, I could look through them, flip through them, and I was like, oh my God, I love this artist. And all I'd ever seen before were like ads and occasional bits and pieces of his work in Heavy Metal magazine. They would usually have ads for some of Giger's books. Sometimes they'd have some pinups and features on him. But it was the first time I could sit down and really look at one of his books. So what my parents did, my parents said basically, okay, you're in college now. I wasn't a kid anymore. I'm not getting toys. So what they said is, like, for Christmas, we'll just get you one thing as your Christmas gift each year. And so each year, there's one other art book, not the film design book. But there's a book specifically on the movie Aliens. It's just the Aliens book. And it's a smaller book. But what happened was each year for Christmas, they would get me a Giger book. So the first year that I was in college, my freshman year for Christmas, they got me the Necronomicon. Now that's some supportive parents. They're buying you an expensive, very crazy art book for anyone who is familiar with it. So my freshman year, I got the Necronomicon. Sophomore year, I got Necronomicon 2. Junior year, I got Biomechanics. And then my senior year, I got the Alien design book. And then a couple years later, sometime after college, after we'd graduated, my buddy Dave got me the film design book. But yeah, so I just want to share that because James had mentioned Giger, and I wanted to let you know I'm a deep cut Giger fan. These books are kind of like the cornerstone of my art collection. The art inside is amazing, and there's a lot of nice biographical text and essays about his life in addition to that. Oh, all right. Well, you know what? I realize I still have work to do on this pirate drawing. but we're at an hour 20 just about. And since I switched the camera anyway, we might as well wrap things up. Let me put this camera up here. And thanks to my parents, but Byron says those are so baller. I completely agree. James also said, wow. I think in the years since then, they have published a large kind of like phone book style collection of like greatest hits of Giger's work. Obviously not as tall, not as big as those books, these large format books that I have, but obviously there's more. His work is more accessible now, but those original Morpheus Gallery books or Gallery Morpheus books are baller. That's not much more you can say than that. So here, as we are wrapping up, I'm curious whether this light will create a, look at that weird reflection on my my glasses here. I don't know. We'll need to see whether we keep the ring light or not. I don't know. You guys can tell me. Leave comments in the video. Let me know whether you're like ring light or no ring light, because it definitely feels weirder now with my glasses on and getting that reflection. But anyway, okay. So, new viewers, subscribe. Please subscribe. If you're coming across the channel here, subscribe. We do this every week. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Be here every week. Sometimes figure drawing, sometimes, film studies, sometimes creature design. Eventually back to working on a comic. Eventually, once I get my writing sorted out. But also, if you know other creative people that enjoy just hearing about the artistic process, the artistic journey, the thoughts that go through an artist's mind while they're crafting work, while they're creating work, while they're succeeding, while they're failing, then yeah, please also not just subscribe, but forward it to people that you think might enjoy it. And if you are enjoying this and you're like, you know what, I'm enjoying these live streams, but where can I get more? I can't get enough. I can't get enough of this guy. I got to sit, hang, talk with them. We have a Patreon. Patreon.com/GERIMI. Patreon.com/Jeremy. So for as little as $2 a month, that gets you in the door. We do something called Art Book Study Group. Twice a month, we do extended live streams. These are not just hour-long sessions. These are 2.5, sometimes 3 hours. I mean, hell, I think we've done one as long as 5 hours one time. But these are our long live streams where we do deep dives in some of the best art books around. The same way that I'm sitting here and I'm going over my own work and studying it and trying to improve, we do sessions where we look at some of the best art books around and try to suck out all the knowledge we can. We've been doing a long-running series, a deep dive on a book called The Figure by Walt Reed, which I think is one of the best books on the fundamentals of figure drawing that I've come across in my experience. We've also got videos of doing work from George Bridgman, animal drawing from Ken Holtgren, a variety of different art books here and there. And there's a whole archive. Aside from catching the live stream one, we have the replays up there for you to watch, hundreds of hours of studying and art conversation for you to check out. Tomorrow night, we're going to have the next live session. It's going to be 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And along with just having the chat, there will be a voice channel on our Discord server. So you can hop on the Discord server and we can actually have a conversation, verbal to verbal, mouth to mouth, an oral experience, as it were. So we can talk while we're drawing. And that goes to the second thing. When you're a Patreon subscriber, you get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server. And it's a place where we share works in progress with each other. We share tips, feedback, art talk, encouragement, and more. If there's work that you want to share with me to actually discuss during our art book study group live streams, you can post it in that Discord server. So yeah, it's just a fun place to extend the conversation that we're having here online during these live streams. So you get all of that. There's a digital archive that you get access to read my comic books online as well. So all that for as little as $2 a month. There's higher tiers for higher rewards, but $2 a month gets you in the door. So by all means, there's links in the description to the video. Head on over, check that out. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. So head on over and check that out. And if you'd like to purchase, where are my books? If you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, free digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like Eye of the Gods. This is my first graphic novel. It's the first book that I published. It's a psychological thriller, a standalone psychological thriller about a man who's cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up books like my most recent project, Morning Star. It is a retelling of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. So it's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion to the series, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character design, script excerpts, page layouts, thumbnails, and more, even photo reference. I basically show you how I put the whole book together. And if you want to see what's inside these books before you pick them up, go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, scroll down to book flip-throughs, and there are book flip-throughs videos for each one of these books separately, so you can see what's inside before you pick it up. All right, gang, that's it. This has been a great session. Thank you, everybody, for all the great conversation. As always, I love hanging out with you guys. I love you guys. I love the feedback. I hope this is encouraging to you to have fun with your work, to keep improving your work, but improving it with kindness to yourself instead of beating yourself up. Encouragement and creativity. All right, guys, that's it for now. Go be creative.